Hey guys, it's Alicia. Today I have another What's for Dinner for you, and it is with Weight Watcher meals. My husband and I are doing the green plan, but I will have the points for the other two plans on the meals also. One of these meals is a family favorite that I've already done a video on, and I will link that down below. The other ones I will write out the ingredients in the description box on this video. I also did a really easy dessert this week, and I'm going to show that too. So this week I started out with a new recipe. This is a turkey chili crock-pot recipe. It sounded good. Now I did make a couple changes to the Weight Watcher recipe, but it's pretty much the same as theirs, and it is the same points as theirs. So I start out here with a can of fire roasted tomatoes, and then I'm also going to put in a can of just regular diced tomatoes. You can use whatever kind of tomatoes you want. I just wanted to use something a little different than just the plain ones for that first can. And now here I'm adding in a can of pinto beans. I didn't drain or rinse these. You probably should, to be honest, but I usually never do. So I just dumped that in there. And then here I'm putting in a can of diced green chilies. And here is the turkey sausage that I used for this dish. I had never tried this one before, and I was actually looking for a different one and could not find it, so I ended up with this one, and it wasn't too bad. Now I'm going to add in a medium red onion that I chopped up. A little bit of chili powder. And I would say I probably ended up putting about a teaspoon in there. And then some ground cumin. That was probably more like a half teaspoon, maybe a teaspoon. Then I decided I was going to add a little cilantro in here. I was originally just going to put this on top for garnish, but I figured I'd throw some in there too. And here is that turkey sausage, and I've got it cut up in little pieces, and I'm going to just toss that in there too. Now I'm going to add a little fresh ground pepper. You can add salt to this if you want. I didn't. And the only reason why is we are always trying to cut back on our salt. But definitely pepper and salt to your own personal taste. So now I'm going to just stir this all up nicely. And that is what it looks like. And then I'm going to put the lid on this, set it to low, and I'm going to cook it for just around 5 to 6 hours. And this is what it looks like after about 5 hours. It is done. So while that chili was cooking, I decided I was going to attempt to make a coleslaw without any type of oil, mayo, anything like that. So I started off using some Greek yogurt. I think I used probably 2/3 cup there. And then I went ahead and added a little apple cider vinegar to this. That was probably a couple tablespoons. And then I also added probably about a tablespoon of lemon juice. Now I love using Greek yogurt for all kinds of different things. So this was just kind of a trial to see how it would work, like I said, as an oil substitute basically in coleslaw dressing. So here I'm adding some pepper. And a little bit of salt. And then I've got a couple, I think I had 4 of them there, stevia packets. And I figured that would equal a couple teaspoons probably. And then I just mixed that up. After tasting it, I decided to add more vinegar. I think I put in about a tablespoon here. And then later, I didn't show, I added probably another tablespoon. So altogether, I had about 4 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar that I added to this. I also went back and added more salt and pepper. And that's all, you know, personal preference. But I added more of that. And here I'm adding in a little bit of garlic because it needed something. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it needed. And since I love garlic, I just thought I'd throw some garlic in there. I think that did help a little, actually. And it ended up not being too bad. Now, I'm not going to say it's great. It definitely is not as good as an oil-based dressing, but the points are definitely right. It is less than 2 points for all of this dressing. So if you figure that, it really doesn't taste too bad. And actually, my husband ended up saying he liked it and would like me to make it in the future. Like I said, I'm still kind of on the fence. I don't know. Not my favorite, but he liked it, so we'll call it a half win. So here I'm using a 16-ounce bag of coleslaw, and I'm just gonna dump this in, mix it all together, and then I refrigerated this for a good couple hours. You want to make sure that you refrigerate it for a while so that those flavors all have kind of a chance to marry together, and it just tastes better once it's been sitting for even like a day. So we had a little bit of this that night, and then we had some the next day too, and it did taste better. So here was dinner, and that turkey chili, for a serving of it, it makes about 4 servings, is only 6 points, and that's a pretty good serving. The coleslaw is, I'm gonna call it a point, but technically it's not even a point because that whole bowl was 2 points, and this is about a quarter of it, but I just rounded it up and called it a point for that. It was a pretty good dinner. Like I said, I wasn't the biggest fan of the coleslaw, but it wasn't bad either. And the turkey chili was pretty good. I think the only thing I would change with that in the future would be to use a different type of turkey sausage, maybe one that had more flavor to it, because that one was kind of plain. Maybe a spicier Italian sausage or something in there would probably taste a little better, but it was pretty good chili. And like I said, the serving size on that is pretty good for 6 points. It was very filling. So altogether, this was a 7-point dinner. Next up is one of my family's favorites, and that is for pizza bubble up. Now I'm just starting with a little bit of spritz of olive oil in a large pan, and here I've got a pound of a lean ground turkey. Now I think in the video I did on this, I used ground beef, and you absolutely can just use a very lean ground beef if you're gonna use that instead of turkey. So I just get this meat cooking, and then I add in about 8 ounces of mushrooms sliced there, a medium yellow bell pepper, and a medium red pepper chopped. And I'm gonna just add this all in to the meat. And then I'm gonna just cook everything together until that meat is done and the veggies have started to soften. I'm also gonna add in a little bit of fresh ground pepper. Now I didn't show it, but once the meat was cooked and the veggies were almost all the way softened, I added in a little bit of garlic, and I just cooked that for about another minute or so. And then I added a little bit of basil, and a little bit of oregano. And that oregano did not want to come out of that container because it was new. And then I just stir that all up. Here I'm adding in 2 cups of marinara sauce. I also took that container, added about a half cup of water, kind of sloshed it around to get the rest of that sauce out, and just to add a little bit more moisture to this. And here I'm adding in some olives. I love olives. And I'm just stirring this all together. Once that's all stirred together, I'm gonna add in some cut up biscuits. This is a half of a can, and I just get my biscuits at Aldi. And so I'm gonna just mix these in until those kind of break apart and just sort of get incorporated in with that meat mixture. The other half of the can of biscuits, I just go ahead and bake up as I'm baking this, and my kids have them. I've got a 9x13 pan here, and I'm gonna just spray it with a little fat-free cooking spray, and then I'm gonna pour in my meat mixture and just kind of spread this out. And my hubby's helping me there because that pan is actually kind of heavy. So just like I said, pour this in, spread it all out, and then I am going to bake this at 350 for about 20 minutes. And while that's baking, I'm gonna go ahead and make up this Caesar salad kit. Now, when I scanned this in the store, it said it was a whole lot less points than when I figured it out at home. And that's an issue I've had with that Weight Watcher scanner, is a lot of times the points are not accurate, which is always a bummer. It's been 20 minutes and I've pulled this out. And as you can see next to it, those are my extra biscuits that I went ahead and cooked up for my kids. So now I'm gonna just sprinkle the top of this with some part skim mozzarella. And then I'm going to put it back in the oven and cook it for probably another 5 minutes or so until that cheese is nice and melted. And here it is after 10 minutes. It's all nice and melted and ready to eat. So I'm gonna just let this sit here for a couple minutes before I cut any out of it. So here I've got a serving of that Bubble Up pizza, and I probably should have let it sit another couple minutes or so because it was still a little kind of runny, but we were hungry. And then here is that salad. This is half of that bag. And as I was saying earlier, the points were not accurate on the scanner for that. The total points for that bag was 14. So if you divide that by 2, it's going to be 7, which is a whole lot of points for a salad. We actually ended up not using the croutons and only using half of the dressing. So we figured we would just count it as about 5 points a serving, which is still pretty high. I probably won't be buying those in the future. So this night I let my hubby cook and he grilled up a T-bone steak. Now this was mainly for just he and I. My son did end up having a little bit of it, but the majority was my husband and I ate this. So he just salts it a little bit. And then he adds a little fresh ground pepper. And then he also adds some ground cumin. And that's all he does for seasoning on his steaks. So then it's just cooking it on the grill. And we like our steaks more on the rare side. I think he cooked this one a little more this time actually. And here it is done, looking delicious. We don't eat a lot of steak, especially now that we're doing Weight Watchers, because steak is kind of high in points, but it is nice to have every once in a while. So while he was cooking up this steak, I went ahead and made up another one of those salad kits. This one right here, the Southwest. And again, this came in on the scanner as way less points than it actually was when I figured it out. So that was super disappointing, and I had to make some adjustments to it to make it a little less points. And here is our dinner. That is 5.5 ounces of a trimmed T-bone steak, which comes in at 11 points. And then that salad was 17 points for the whole bag, so half of it would be roughly 9. We only used half the dressing and called it 7 points. So I don't think I will be buying these salad kits anymore, as much as I love them, because they're just too high in points. This also has taught me to definitely double check that scanner because it is not accurate a lot of the time. This last meal is a new one for me. My son had requested lasagna, so I went ahead and found a new Weight Watcher recipe that I have not tried before for lasagna, and that is turkey, mushroom, and spinach lasagna. It sounded really good, so I thought I would give it a try. So I first start off with adding a little bit of olive oil to a pan, getting that all heated up. And then I add in 1 pound of a lean ground turkey. I'm gonna add a little fresh ground pepper to this. And I'm gonna just cook this until this is browned and cooked completely. Once that turkey is brown, I'm gonna go ahead and set it aside on that plate there. And then I'm gonna take that same pan, add a little more olive oil. I'm gonna cook up this onion and bell pepper that I've chopped up. And I'm gonna just cook them until they start to soften up a little bit. And then once those are softened, I'm gonna add in some mushrooms. And then I'm also gonna add a little bit of garlic in here. And I'm gonna just cook this until those mushrooms have softened. Now I'm gonna add in some fresh spinach. I have an 8-ounce bag here. The recipe actually calls for 1 pound of spinach, which I wish I had because I love putting a lot of veggies in things. I only had 8 ounces, so that's what I used. And so I start out with about half of the bag that I poured in here. I waited until that started to kind of wilt down a little bit, and then I added the other half of the bag and just kept stirring it until that spinach was cooked down. And then I added the brown turkey back in and just stirred everything up real well. Here I have a 9x13 casserole dish, and I'm gonna just spray it with a little non-fat cooking spray. And then I'm gonna take some marinara sauce and I'm just gonna pour a little bit on the bottom of the pan. Now this recipe calls for 4 cups. This jar is only 3, but I figured I would just make that work. And now I'm going to lay a layer of lasagna noodles along the bottom of this. Now they say to layer 4, but as you can see, 4 does not fill this pan. You're supposed to use 12 noodles total. So this first layer I kind of put right in the middle of the pan. And then the 2 layers after that, I kind of offset. I put one more towards one end of the pan and the other more towards the other end of the pan so that there was a little bit of overlapping and noodles on both ends of the pan. Obviously the end pieces are not gonna have as much as the middle, but that was the best that I could do with that size of pan. Next, I put half of the turkey mixture on top of the noodles. And then I took some of this ricotta cheese and I took about half of it and kind of dotted it on top of this turkey mixture. And then I added a little more marinara to the top of this, followed by the second layer of noodles. And as you can see here, I'm putting this layer more towards that end of the casserole dish. And like I said, I do the opposite with the final layer of noodles. Next, you're gonna top with the remaining turkey mixture, the rest of the feta, more sauce, the final layer of noodles, followed by the rest of the sauce, and then you're going to top it with some mozzarella cheese. Next, I'm gonna take a piece of aluminum foil and I'm gonna go ahead and spray it with this cooking spray so that it doesn't stick to the top of the lasagna. And I'm gonna just cover this up and I'm gonna cook it at 375 for about 30 minutes. And then I'm gonna take it back out, uncover it, and cook it for about another 20 minutes or until those noodles have softened up and that cheese has kind of browned just a little bit. Here's what it looks like when it is all done. Now I'm gonna just let this sit for about 15 minutes to cool a little bit before I cut into it. And here is a serving size of this. It is roughly a 1/12 of the dish. I had my hubby try this since this is the first time I made it to see what he thought. Okay, I'm gonna have my hubby try this since we've never had this specific recipe before.
Yeah, it's really good. It's got the nice mix of flavors. You know, that's turkey, right? Mm-hmm. You can taste the turkey and the mushrooms are really coming through. And the cheese is good. I mean, that's a good tasting lasagna.
So how do you like this compared to the lasagna rolls that I made?
Probably about the same.
About the same?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This week I made a really easy dessert that I wanted to share with you guys. And it starts off with a graham cracker crust. You can either make your own like I'm gonna do here, or you can buy one, which is even easier. But making them is pretty easy too. So I just took a sleeve of low-fat graham crackers and I put them in the Ziploc bag and broke them up with a rolling pin. And now here I'm adding a little light margarine, and I had to add more. I started off with 2 tablespoons and added another 2 tablespoons to get the right consistency. And then I added in a little Trevia, just stevia there, no calorie sweetener. And then I just mixed that up real well. And I added it to a pie pan. I just pressed it in here the best I could. You could take it up the sides if you wanted to, and I kind of started to there, but then I just left it on the bottom. So now you're gonna bake this at 350 for about 8 minutes, and that is what it looks like when it's done. So now I'm gonna just let this cool, and once it's cool, I'm gonna go ahead and start on my filling here, which is 3 of these whipped yogurt mousse. Now I'm using 2 chocolate and a coconut just because I thought that sounded good to me. You can use whatever flavor you want, but again, I thought chocolate with coconut sounded yummy. So I'm gonna add those in there, and then I'm gonna put an 8-ounce container of that fat-free whipped topping in there. Next, I'm gonna add a little Hershey's cocoa, and I'm gonna just mix this up real well. Then I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna pour it into my cooled crust. And I'm going to let this chill in the fridge for a good 3 hours. You can also freeze this if you want. I've done both and they both are good. If you want a little firmer texture, freezing is a good way to go. Here's what this looks like when it's chilled. And I've cut out a serving size there, which is 1/8 of the pie. This is really, really good, really, really easy. And everyone in my family loves it, including my kids. So especially my youngest, actually, he really, really likes this. So it's definitely a nice, easy go-to dessert. That is all I have for this What's for Dinner. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.